Hi everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Sitrion Talks. We are live on YouTube and on Google+. For those who didn't join us last month, I'm Luke Sinclair, our Director of Community Management here at Sitrion, and I want to welcome you to today's talk. Sitrion Talks is really designed to inspire, excite, and encourage big thinking, and we have been talking with some great guests who are lining up. These are some of the brightest minds from social business that come from our customers, our partners, and our friends, and we are inviting them to come online with us and share some of their stories. So I hope you find the next half hour or 40 minutes valuable. Sitrion Talks also, we really encourage question and answers. We want this to be interactive. I know that you can't talk to us directly through the broadcast, but we do have the Q&A app enabled, and we'd love to see some questions coming through as we go through this talk. We think we're delayed by about 40-50 seconds to your screen, so keep them coming, and don't worry, we will get around to answering them all. If we don't get them in the talk, we'll answer them afterwards, no problem. Don't forget to continue the conversation as well on Twitter. We are using a hashtag, #SitrionTalks. We had some great buzz there last month, and we'd love to grow on that again. So if you are using Twitter today, jump online. You can connect with me and our guest Mary. We're both there on Twitter as well. So on that note, I'd like to introduce today's guest. It's Mary Maida from Medtronic. She's the Knowledge and Solutions Manager over there, and she's a customer of Sitrion who recently presented a really awesome session at our collective conference in Orlando, and we were really excited by the session that she presented there, and we wanted to share it out with the rest of the world, so you could all experience what Medtronic are learning and working on there as well. Mary has been at Medtronic for over 20 years. She's based out of Minneapolis. Hi Mary, welcome to Sitrion Talks.
Hello everyone. Happy to be here.
Why can't I see you? Oh, no.
Oh, pardon me.
We're still ironing out a few technical issues with our Google Hangouts. Are you there, Mary?
I am. Can you see me?
Oh, I can see you. There you are.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Cool.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome. Look, I'm going to hand straight over to you. I know that you have prepared a few slides, and you're going to share with us some of the things that you showed us down in Orlando in May.
Yes.
So let me hand over the reins to you, and we'll come back for some questions afterwards.
Sounds really good, Luke. Okay, let me bring up the presentation here at this end, and let's see. I'll be right there with you. And there we go. Let me know if you see it at your end, if you would, Luke.
I see it.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, hello everyone. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you for the introduction, Luke. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you our experience with open questions at Medtronic using our internal social network. I work in the Medtronic Knowledge Center, and we are the group that manages our network at Medtronic. And I hope, as the title suggests, that we promote and we see the importance of asking questions as part of our information gathering diet regime, if you will, to get work done and to learn fast. And our job has been to influence employees' behaviors to get them to ask questions more comfortably and to nourish, if you will, their business decisions. So if I could, I'd like to just share a few information points about Medtronic before we get into the questions part of the talk. Just to let you know, our headquarters for Medtronic is located in Minneapolis. We are a 65-year-old medtech company with about 46,000 employees worldwide. And we are in the business of helping to transform healthcare worldwide. We're working on improving outcomes, expanding access to healthcare, and enhancing economic value. We have a high population of scientists and engineers that contribute to a robust patent portfolio, as you see there. Our fiscal year actually just ended in May, but our sales for last fiscal year were about $16.5 billion. About 40% of that comes from new products introduced in the last 2 years. Our therapies treat a broad range of medical conditions, and our devices, such as implantable pacemakers, implantable drug pumps, are sophisticated technologies. And we are proud that another life around the world is improved every 3 seconds because of those therapies and those technologies. But if you can imagine, all of this takes a lot of brain power, a lot of collaboration, and we know that we need to be efficient as we work together to get those therapies out the door. So talking about questions. When we think about questions in our culture, in our society, when you think about it, it's really fun. It's rewarding to raise your hand when you know the answer, or when you know you can help. You're recognized for what you know. It's a little more difficult, isn't it, to raise that same hand to say, I don't know, I have a question, I need help. And in a large company like Medtronic, it's especially hard, I believe, to know where to find your answers or to know who can help. And it's also hard to raise that virtual hand to post to the online world that you need help, especially if you're someone maybe that's not so accustomed to online open work styles. And I think what goes on in people's heads is, wait, so now you're asking me to ask a question online so the whole company knows I need help. Are you serious? My company, my manager expect me to know this. And am I going to appear unimaginative or unintelligent, if you will? We need to ask questions to make decisions and to get our work done. And in business, when you really think about it, we're paid to make good decisions. And if we can ask good questions, we believe, and get good answers, and ask those questions at the right time, we're ahead of the game. At Medtronic, like a lot of your organizations, our culture is expert. We have high-degree scientists and engineers. We're a busy company like all of you are. We're regulated by the FDA and other regulatory agencies. We're made up of diverse businesses, and we encourage transparency. Our challenge is, how do we get our smart employees to ask these open questions and to take advantage of this global network we have, this diverse platform of knowledge, to think beyond their work team and their department when they have a question, and to really tap into that helping culture of Medtronic, and to get folks to realize that asking questions is not a weakness, but it's actually a knowledge competency. About 20 years ago, one of my first jobs at Medtronic when I started was to manage what we called the Medtronic Expert Space. And this was an internal database of technical employees. And this database sat on a cart in a locked office. It was a separate computer. And what it held, the database held technical employees' levels of expertise. Basically, there was a form everyone filled out where they ranked themselves 1 to 5 in areas such as physics or medicine or chemistry. And then the idea was that other employees would make a phone call and find out who those employees were that were ranked at the highest level. What we learned was fascinating. We learned that people, and this again goes back 20 years, but people really shied away from the word expert. We also found that employees had a tendency to rate themselves low. Maybe others regarded them as a number 5, let's say in the area of ceramics, but they were a little conservative and maybe rated themselves 3. And so when people would want to call and identify top-notch experts, there was a suspicion that we weren't always necessarily getting those top quote-unquote experts. The other thing is, it was hard to keep this database up. People were busy. It was hard to get the information input into the database. There was no context. So it was what it was at the time. But these days, if you really move forward to the present day, when we think about our technical community, and even if I were to hone in on our R&D budget specifically, in this last year we had about $1.5 billion US as an R&D budget, and if you break that down, that's roughly about $6 million US a working day. And so we know that we have to work well. We have to work efficiently. And the more that we can take advantage not just of those experts that we know, but across the whole organization, the better. So fast forward many years, we have a network in place at Medtronic that we call MIX, standing for the Medtronic Information Exchange. We've had our network in place for about 5 years, since late 2009. And like a lot of your networks, some of our key themes are to draw visibility to all of the organization, to help us tap into what we know, what our experience is, and use our experience in many different ways. And of course, one of the key ways to do that is, we find, is by asking questions. We have seen increased usage over the years in a number of different ways. We measure at least activity. But in the questions area, we are seeing really growing numbers every fiscal year in terms of the number of questions that are being asked, but also a growing number of responses per question. So let me take you just a little deeper down into our experience here, our journey as we call it, to see, like, how did we get from where we were to where we are now. And believe me, we still have a lot more work to do. But so of course we had our lockdown expert space in the 90s, but starting around 2009, before we brought NewsGator within the organization, we partnered with a company called Incentive. We were working to get our technical audience to ask open questions, to work through open innovation issues, and it worked well. We, at the same time, started a movement that we called Unleash Your Mind, to encourage employees to think outside of their work area, to think outside of their experience, and go beyond what they know. We brought NewsGator in late in that same year. And just a few months later, in early 2010, because we had NewsGator in place, we decided to start a community called Ask a Question. And this is before the Ask a Question tab, if you will, started at NewsGator. But we started this community. It was all based on discussion. So it was questions in the form of discussion. And we started this because although we had a SharePoint discussion started in the Incentive world, we started another world in this community of questions, because we heard people say, I have a question, there are so many communities, I'm just not sure where to ask a question to get the most visibility. So we thought, let's kind of brand, if you will, a tool, and we'll call it Ask a Question. And it really took off. It worked well for us in this SharePoint discussion sort of venue. The next year at Medtronic, we introduced microblogging, and everyone went crazy with excitement with microblogging. We were finding that people are starting to ask questions in microblog form in the stream, which was great. We decided around that same time frame to drop Incentive, because Incentive was a very formal, sort of a heavy process where people worked with coaches to post their questions and so forth. An excellent product, but we were just finding that people were starting to post their questions in the community and actually just in the open stream. And so we felt that we were doing well with our existing resources, so we decided, let's let go of that Incentive license. About a year later, the Ask a Question tab started, or was introduced at Medtronic, and so we had an issue now. We had to change our Ask a Question community name to Ask Medtronic to distinguish the two venues for asking questions. We were a little concerned because although the Ask a Question feature worked well on the stream, we didn't want to drop our community of questions, and so we thought, let's just see how this goes. Let's experiment. Let's see where people tend to be wanting to ask questions more, here or there. And so questions just took off. People found that tab, and they just went gangbusters asking questions. Around that same time, we also saw the importance of profile campaigns. So we for a couple of years, really, we had profile campaigns at various locations at the company to get people to load their photos, but also We emphasize the importance of a full profile so people could understand the connection between asking questions and having their fields of content filled out. We happened to have a class called Art of Questions that was being offered around the same time, which wasn't directly related to the network work, but certainly helped draw attention to the importance of questions. We're also doing some work with Columbia and Duke, looking at the effect of communications on identity and helping. And so we spent quite a bit of time in real focused ways, really around 2011, 2012 going forward. We started an email called the Recent Questions email, which now started to include questions from the stream as well as questions from the Ask Medtronic community. And I'll talk about this in more detail, but this was an email we would send out every couple of weeks for unanswered questions. So this drew attention to questions just by virtue of the email being sent out. And lastly, really in 2013 and 14, we've been spending a good deal of time promoting the asking of questions. Certainly the social features that NewsGator has provided just really make a difference in people getting more quick responses from those questions through hashtagging and direct mentioning too. So we really moved from that more closed world from 20 years ago to a more open world today, from a more formal world certainly to a more informal world of asking questions and getting responses. Our questions, for the most part, honestly tend to be very technical in nature. We have a lot of scientific and technical questions. This is a non-prepared kind of question I'm just showing you here. We've always wanted to have a range of questions, and it's really been in the last 2 years that we have started to see more non-technical questions come in, where people are starting to ask how-to questions or questions about Outlook or SharePoint or iPhones or projects, whatever it might be. Granted, there's still a heavy emphasis on technical questions, but we're getting a broader range than ever before. We are starting to see more senior leaders ask questions. We certainly would like to see more, but it's kind of exhilarating to see that in fact they are asking questions and actually answering questions here and there as well. So we're happy about that. So let me show you, just get you into the nuts and bolts here a little bit of how we do what we do with questions. This is a little closer look at our current Ask Medtronic community, and we know it as a community, but the average user at Medtronic doesn't think of it as a community as much as a tool. But it really is a community. We've changed the look of it to some extent. We've taken off the left bar, we've taken off all the tabs at the top, and we've really just only turned on the questions capability here. So the idea is that when people come here, it's very simple, it's very streamlined, it's all about questions. We have about 350 communities right now, and a great deal of questions happen in all those communities, but there are many people that just prefer to start here at this broad-based community, knowing that we'll help get their question in the right spot, or if they just simply don't know where to start, again, this is their starting place. We have featured questions, if you'll see there on the right side of the screen. This is where we always feature 3 questions every couple weeks, and I'll describe that as well. We've used some of the social features, we believe, I should say, to the greatest extent that we can. For example, when employees join the network, they are automatically added to this particular community. They can unfollow, of course, but our thinking is that if every member belongs to this common community, everyone will see every question. All members are also auto-subscribed to notifications, so when it's their turn to ask a question, they automatically will get that loop of notifications coming through right away. have seen that more people are starting to use hashtags. It's still an uphill battle to some extent, but certainly the suggested tag prompt is encouraging more and more people to use hashtags to help themselves match their question up to experts out there. The third bullet on the screen, where I've listed social librarians, to me is one of the best reasons that this community works. This is something we launched almost 2 years ago now, I believe, and our thinking here is we're molding a couple of folks on our staff as social librarians, basically human guides, people that are connectors, that will hover, all the time and look for questions that need a little help. Maybe they need hashtags added to the post. Maybe they need their post to be routed to a specific community. Maybe they can direct mention people in the post. Whatever they can think of to help that question get more visibility, that's the work that they do. What I like about this is I think not only does it help the questions get to the right spot faster, I think it ups the confidence of people that see that happen, that there are actual humans in there that are moving things along. I also think it promotes a culture of helping, and so really in the last couple of years especially, we see more and more people jumping in and with their generosity of time, adding what they know or trying to help where they can. So I believe those social librarian roles and also champions that we have on here at Medtronic help in that regard. We try to instill this sense of open teaching. So, for example, if someone is adding a hashtag or a direct mention, they'll not only do that, but they'll explain what they're doing, so others seeing that post understand how these features work. That's working really well for us. Another piece to share with you is this biweekly email I was describing earlier. This is one we sent out a couple of months ago. This is the slide I had during the collective back in May, but it's the same format. We send this email out every 2 weeks to company-wide, and every email has about 20 questions or so per email. And we will always feature the 3 featured questions that you see there at the top. The way that this works is our staff will look through all of the questions that have been asked in the stream every 2 weeks. We use the questions filter, and we make some judgments, which questions haven't been answered maybe at all, which questions have been answered, but from what we can tell, there still maybe isn't that solid answer yet. So we do make some judgments, and generally speaking, like I said, it's 20 to 25 questions. We will then figure out featured questions, and these are either questions where employees have said, I want to be at the top of the email for visibility, or this might be where we decide that a question should be featured. Maybe it's asked by a senior leader, or maybe it's a topic that is really a hot topic at Medtronic right now. Or maybe it's a question that has broad application. And so that's really the general way that we gather up all this information. But up until a year ago, this was a very heavy, arduous kind of process. I shouldn't exaggerate it that much, but it did take some time to put this together. And so one of the folks on our staff created, actually a couple of them, worked really closely on some workflows. And so this is an easier process than ever before, because one workflow will actually create the look and feel of the email, and then another workflow will create the communications related to it. So for example, there'll be an email going out to those 20-25 people saying, your question's going to be in the email. If you don't have a picture, make sure you have it, and let us know if you don't want your question included. And then the next workflow sends out an email about a week later, encouraging all these folks to thank people that have helped them with their question, to mark good answers, and if possible, to explain how that information has helped them with their question if they can yet. what we think is really important about this is that it teaches etiquette, if you will, about questions. That it's great to ask questions and get information, but to make sure you recognize that input that you've gotten, and I think it just kind of like a snowball effect. It shows others good etiquette too. And then lastly, we sent out a survey to everyone who's asked a question to see how the experience was, if they got the information they needed, and if they did not get the information they needed, we invite them to contact our staff to see what else we might be able to help them with. So that's how the process works. I should add that the featured questions that are in the email, we will also list those very same questions every bi-week at that Ask Medtronic site I just showed you. So there's visibility to those particular 3 questions in several different places. We find that when we send the email out, people are answering those questions just right away. So there's very quick turnaround of information when that email is sent out. And then one last screen to show you here about our tools. At our main Mix homepage, which you're looking at here, this is our public curation site. We have done a few things where we've turned on the all public items filter, and we've predefined the activities that everyone will see by default, including questions. So every question that's posted in a public community, or any question that starts here at the home page, is automatically reported in the stream. So the message we're hoping to send is not only, here's a question, can you help, but also, more importantly, I think, questions are just what we do. This is just the normal course of business. Go ahead and ask your question too. We do a lot of teaching, a lot of promoting, a lot of storytelling, and the common messages that we will tout are: we all ask questions, we all help answer questions, and we are all experts. That we are all hired with experience and with skills to share, and in that way we are all the same. We create tips, we create guides to help people ask questions. We've done a couple of videos where we highlight successes that have come from asking questions. We do a fair amount of electronic billboarding around asking questions, and writing stories too, where we highlight people's experiences of asking questions online. I shared this figure with you before about the increased question engagement levels, but the piece I want to really emphasize, and that's really delighting us and we're happy to see, is that not only that the questions are going up, but the number of responses per question is also increasing. Last fiscal year we had about roughly 3 responses to a question. This year it's about 4 responses to a question. And to us that is success too, to see more engagement from the answer side of things. We make sure we are always gathering stats and anecdotes and surveys. As I was describing before, we send out a biweekly survey, but we're always coming up with new surveys to get new pieces of information. We just created a survey within the last month, by the way, too, where we're honing in on the top 100 questioners from last fiscal year. They asked a high level of questions, and so we think they're a good group to ask questions about their successes, to really try to find those big wins, those big testimonials. We're always on the hunt for those. To finish out my talk today, I would like to just share with you one survey that we did 2 years ago, and that we're in the process of updating actually right now. But this survey was conducted. We had about 225 respondents back in that year, and so we did some in-depth interviews as well to find out that when asked, how long would you estimate it would take you to answer your own tough question that you just posted at Mix? And we found that more than half of the people responding estimated that it would take them more than a day to answer that question, so roughly 8 hours. And when we asked people that answered questions how long it took them on average to answer questions, it was 95% of the questions answered took less than 30 minutes to solve. Most people responded it took them 5 minutes or less. So if you look at those two figures, roughly that's about 7.5 hours estimated time saved per question answered. We found that if you looked at the experience on the right there of people that answered questions, those questions could be answered very, very quickly because it was from their experience that they were drawing. You know, they didn't. A lot of those folks that were answering questions weren't really searching for answers or asking people. They were really just answering based on their past experience. So it wasn't a burden, in other words, to answer a good deal of these questions. We took the model just a little further, and we had some predefined definitions of low, medium, and high question level activity. And we assumed, so if we assumed that 7.5 hours of time saved per question, and we assumed, let's just say, an average yearly salary of $125,000, that's roughly about $500 saved per question. Again, this is just a model, but a way to talk about it. And so we plotted, you know, back to FY13 using this model, how many questions were asked times 500. And you can see our figures for FY13 and FY14. And I just plotted, actually, just yesterday, you know, anticipating FY15 based on activity we just saw come in this quarter. You know, we're somewhere in that range over time of cumulatively saving the company, you know, money that really starts to get your attention. Now, granted, this isn't a perfect science. It's hard to measure ROI, but the way I like to think about it is this is a way to talk about the value of questions. And even if we take those figures and cut them in half, and honestly, even if we cut them into 1/4 of the figure, it's still remarkable, and I think it starts to put the asking of questions on par with some of the other knowledge tools we use at a company like Medtronic, like licensed databases or licensed literature or copyright licenses. So this is just some general trending that we're going to be watching, and like I said, we're updating the survey that we did in FY12 to see what are some of the new numbers, what are some of the new responses about time saved. I do suspect that because our questions are not solely so heavy technical that this number will shift, but that's what we're hoping to find out this year. So what's ahead? For this next year, we're hoping to add the Suggest Ahead feature from Sitrion, so that when people first do that search, maybe to see if the question's been asked before, they can easily get to related content. And we're also working on what we're calling question literacy, to just work with people, consult with people, even if it's just a quick text message online about how to pose a good question to get that good answer that they're after. So that's our story, and we still have a lot of work to do, but it's been a fun journey so far.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
I love this story because I think it's so it's really unique the way you guys are using our tool to really make everything you do about question and answers. It's very, very cool. I loved when you were talking about the social librarians, and I'm really interested in hearing about that role a little more.
Okay.
I'm interested in knowing sort of like how you select these people. Is this something that's included as part of their role? Are they kind of like the curators of the network? This
yeah.
sounds exciting.
That's a good question. These are two people on our staff that are actually master degree librarians, if you will, and their role is not only, like you said, to do curation and to kind of point people in the right direction and do that online open teaching to get them to get employees to think about their question and to kind of enhance that routing of questions to the right spot. But because these social librarians have the background of knowledge management, we're also wanting them to start to incorporate more of other tools that might also help. So for example, if someone has a incidence and prevalence question, they might ask a question, but that social librarian might say, you know, we also have a database over here that is an incidence and prevalence database that you might want to take a look at. So their role is to try to incorporate many different knowledge resources and responses, if you will, to a question beyond that asking of a question.
We actually had a question which is appropriate from the online audience. And if there are any more questions from any of our viewers who are watching, please post them into the Q&A section, because I'd love to ask Mary while we have her here on the line. We did receive a question which is along the same theme as what we've just been talking about, and it's more around like when you have questions that are around sensitive information or you know, because you're so heavily regulated. I guess what they're trying to ask is, do you have people who monitor for that kind of thing and check for correct answers?
That's a great question. We do have a lot of people that are constantly hovering. In addition to the social librarians I mentioned, and in addition to our staff, we have what we call social champions that are always in and out of the environment. But every community leader is asked to hover and look and pay attention to what's being posted to. And honestly, we have not had all that many in the 5 years the network's been in place, many situations where we've had to give someone a call or delete a post. The cases where we've had to do that have not been because of sensitive regulatory information or sensitive legal information, as much as maybe other sensitive personal, situations, if you will. So I think because we've tried to do a decent job with community leaders to teach them, if you're starting a community, define exactly what it is you're going to do in this community. The rules still apply as they would in email, through business conduct. You wouldn't say in a network what you wouldn't say in a network what you wouldn't say in email, and what you wouldn't say in this channel or that channel. All the same rules apply. So we, I think through our good, solid community leaders and also just the messages that we post, we have actually not had any problems with that.
Yeah, we find, as I talk to a lot of our customers, we find similar experience. They don't often have a lot of problems with that, but it's often a question on people's mind when they're thinking about enterprise social or going down this road. You talked about a couple of things you're looking at in the future. I mean, has this you talked a lot about questions and answers, but do you think that the question and answers program has really kicked off any other like valuable collaborative use cases that you can share from Medtronic?
Yes. Let's see. Two that come to mind for me are, first of all, about 2 years ago, the company started what are called global town hall meetings. These are quarterly meetings that our CEO leads on a global scale. And our corporate communications group, and we do have some social champions in our corporate communications group, launched these global town halls, allowing people to ask questions during our CEO's town hall. So there was a community set up, and it's actually been very successful, where the CEO will take questions from the community during his town hall. And it allows people to ask questions before the meeting, during the meeting. So that to me is one of our better win-win situations. We also have an annual, what we call an annual Science and Technology Conference. And this is where people, when they attend this very large conference, can pose questions and comments to the presenters in this conference. So it's an added benefit, an added channel, if you will, for conference information, much like an external conference we would go to. we're able to see microblogging posts and questions coming in throughout that conference week.
I have another question, Mary, from the audience. Actually, a couple of questions, so it's good to see they're coming through. How do you train new hires to adopt this platform?
We have another social champion, actually, in our new employee orientation space, who has really promoted the use of social with our new employees. And so every new employee that joins the company is introduced to the network and is given information about upcoming trainings, so there's no delay in that new employee learning about the network. We also have a new employee community, come to think of it, in our space as well, and it's pretty active, and it's a large community, and it's a way for people new to the company to get resources quickly. So that's worked well for us, I think.
Sure. And another question there we have is this program a component of a larger social business initiative? And are you working on promoting? Are you promoting, sorry, this way of working in other areas?
I should explain that the group that I work within is called the Knowledge Center. We are an organization that is responsible for internal and external information. So we're not IT, but so our IT function is very much a strong leader in other collaborative tools, other collaborative technologies. So I think in tandem with their efforts, certainly with corporate communications efforts with external social media and their internal efforts with social media, we have several pockets that, all boats are rising, if you will, to let the average employee realize this is how we work. We're seeing a lot of traditional practices that were more closed down, if you will, opening up as the years are going by. I hope that answered the question that the person was after.
Yeah, I think so. There's actually a lot of questions coming through now. We're really firing on all cylinders here. We had a comment, Mary. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing your view of the modern librarians and the value they can provide. So that's cool. We also have a question: what efforts are being made to increase the usage of hashtags or general tagging to increase metadata and tying to experts by the end users themselves?
That's such a great question. It's still a challenge for us. I will say again, the social librarians, I think, are helping to encourage that behavior. And even though NewsGator Sitrion has that fantastic suggested tags feature, I think people are still afraid of it, honestly. We've done things such as we've created tip sheets about how to create the perfect post. We've created tip sheets just on hashtagging so people have a better understanding of what they are and how they work. We do a lot of open teaching. I'm finding, though, in the last couple of years, people in conversation are just talking about hashtagging as though it's becoming more of a norm. It used to be such a mystery. So it's becoming more and more of a way of posting for people. But it still creates fear, I think, in a lot of people's minds because they're not sure how it works. We have tried to, through posts in the stream and through, again, corporate storytelling and other means, tried to really make that strong connection between the Ask Me About field in people's profiles and asking a question and how important that is. What we find is that we have to do some cleanup in our taxonomy, if you will, in that Ask Me About field, because rather than having single word or multi-word phrases, sometimes people have these long run-on hashtags / sentences, and so there's some work we can do at that end to make the asking of questions and the matching to that field better.
I remember a few years ago, trying to think of lots of creative analogies to describe what a hashtag was and why we used it. And I think you're definitely right. It is becoming more the norm. Absolutely, a lot of people understanding it more, using it more commonly. I think as more social media channels, the commercial channels that we use have started to incorporate hashtagging into their platforms, as it's become more the norm. We have one more question, and then we might start to wrap up. Actually, there's just a follow-on question from that one, so I'll ask that. A follow-up question about the tagging. Do you allow them to control, or are the tags curated by you?
Oh, any employee can add their own hashtag as they wish. As they add a hashtag, they will see the previous hashtags, of course, that are in the system. Our IT group curates a certain taxonomy, if you will, and our folksonomy is added to that. We have talked about the need, though, to have a team, have people go through all of those terms, the formal and the informal hashtags, to normalize them and to consolidate them. I think that would make the searching and the matching of information work so much better. So we definitely have work to do there.
Mary, there's one question here about what Medtronic's doing to leverage the mobile capabilities of social sites. Are you using any of the tools that we offer for your particular use case?
Yes, we're using the app for the iPhone. The Droid is around the corner, I understand, for the app to be used at Medtronic, but we have the iPhone available. We have turned on, I don't know if this is a default feature for everyone or not, but we have turned on the ability for the Outlook email system to work with our community, so people can, when they get that notification, can reply with email, whether it's on their phone or not. We don't have a high population of iPhone app users, but we have made it available to our users.
That's awesome. Mary, thank you so much for joining us. I thought we'd just close with one question. In the theme of the collective, which was make work better, which is also Sitrion's mission statement.
Right.
What lies ahead for Medtronic? You talked a little bit about a couple of things you're expecting, but what's sort of the bigger picture vision for this?
Well, I feel that we've spent the last few years getting more and more people on board, and we see more and more employees becoming more active. So it's becoming just a way of working more than it was 5 years ago. So I feel like we have this rich capability just at our fingertips, and it's prime time for us to really optimize that large collective of people. We've talked about global challenges where we have 24-hour challenges of asking a question or posing a problem and asking the globe, in 24 hours to participate in an open innovation jam session, if you will. To me, that would start to solve some, it would just be another way to solve some of these real business questions that we have. And we have a lot of enthused people in the space comfortable working with this tool to make that happen too. I believe that we're on the track of asking questions as just a normal way of doing business, and working socially as a normal way of doing business. It's not separate. It's just assumed that you ask questions and you share information, which is much different than 5 years ago. So we're getting there.
Mary Maida from Medtronic, thank you for joining us. This has been awesome insight. We have recorded. Thanks. We have recorded today's session. It's been live on YouTube. It will be available on our YouTube channel really soon after the recording has ended. So if you did enjoy it, please share it on Twitter, share it with your colleagues at work, and let them know about Sitrion Talks. We have another talk coming up next month, and we'll be announcing details of that soon. Until then, thanks for joining us, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.